start it? Good morning, everyone. Good morning. That's the way Trungpa Rinpoche always started his talks, even if there was 2 a.m. sometimes. Well, 2 a.m. was morning, right? But he did it always. It was always good morning. So I think I'd like to invite some comment on that meditation practice. Any comments or questions? No? Tim?
I feel like
how about a mic? Do we have a mic? It's okay.
it's been a while now, but I'm starting to feel something of what my understanding of what you said is, that by just observing the thoughts, that they'll dissipate on their own. And another teacher once talked about, like, the tighter a grip I try and get on the breath, the more it turns into like an angry serpent, and it just like starts writhing around. And so just being with what is. I mean, I feel like I have a long way to go, but I'm starting to see that maybe I'm on the first 2 stepping stones.
Actually, it's the shortest distance imaginable. It's no distance at all, because it's just a figure ground issue. The thoughts are the figure, and all of this that's going on unstoppably in your awareness is the ground. It's literally called the ground in some contexts, the ji in Tibetan, or the alaya in Sanskrit. And what it's referring to is this space that's full of the 6 knowables, that's always, always here. It's always part of our ongoing, unstoppable awareness. Now, sometimes we may not be hearing sounds. Some of the 6 knowables, come and go. But that space of knowingness is always there. It's who we are. And thoughts arise in the middle of that, and then they pass away. And when they pass away, we're still here in the space. It's just that what samsara, or confusion, is that we get lost in the figures. The thoughts, they're the figure against the ground. And we lose track of the ground. The ground is who we really are. The thoughts are not. We think that's who we are. But that's literally, we think it. And it comes and goes. And it's not who we really are. The thoughts are very partial, very fragmented versions of reality, tiny little slices. But we take them to be everything. And in doing that, we make a huge error. This is who we really are. What is happening in the present moment. This person who is Tim and John and Becca and Marie and Mike, each one of us has our own very vivid, distinct qualities that present themselves without any effort on our part. It's unstoppable. And then thought comes in with its little temporary project, game, desire. And it's very temporary, very fragmented. And so really the whole thing of meditation is that we're switching our loyalty from these false stories of I and all my problems and virtues and hopes and fears to reality, which is this. And it requires relaxation. We relax into this space of awareness, and we just see the thoughts. If we have any ambition, that itself is another and more pernicious thought, actually. It's a subtler, sneakier one. Because it says you're going to get better. That's what's so sneaky about ambition. And it's false. It's just a false little game that we play. So really the whole point of meditation is about rediscovering reality, sanity, and giving up thought, the dreams of thoughts. You can't give it up because it will come back of its own, but it becomes less and less. Yes, Marie?
So I've noticed that meditation is the only and the greatest...
What is?
I've noticed that meditation is the greatest and the only way to relax and rest your mind. Because you can rest your physical body while you're sleeping or like laying on the sofa or bed or whatever. But as for the mind, it's the only way to relax it, because mind gets tired, right? And even when you sleep, when you're having dreams, it's still like working non-stop. It's getting tired, and the only way when it gets rest and relief is when you're sitting and meditating, and this is awesome. And yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for the fact that I started to know how to meditate, because it's great.
Everything you say is deep in the tradition. There are so many different versions of that. There's Talopa's 6 points, and the first one is: give up thoughts about the future, it never comes. Stop worrying about the past, it's gone. Don't try to control your life, it's not controllable. And I forget what they all are, but the last one is just rest. Just rest. Rest in this space of awareness. And in doing it, one becomes, ironically, wise, enlightened, sane, accurate, free of delusion, free of defilements, the defilements of the passions. More or less. Every time we rest, we come back and rest. I mean, again and again, they say, I wanted to tell you about a wonderful essay I've been reading in this book. Tulku Urgyen, he was a wonderful teacher, great teacher. Rainbow painting. And there's a chapter in here on mindfulness. And it is beautifully profound. It is really gorgeous. I'll see if I can find something worth reading here that isn't so out of context. It'll be difficult. He says, as conceptual thinking diminishes and finally vanishes, what is left to cause us to wander in samsara? The very basis for samsaric existence. Samsara, of course, is confusion and suffering. The very basis for samsaric existence is none other than conceptual thinking, he says. The moment we notice that we are carried away by thought, we think, I have wandered off. By recognizing the identity of who has been distracted, you have automatically arrived back in the view. See, the view is the awareness of this present moment. Simple, clear, just right here. So he says, by recognizing the identity of who has been distracted, me, you have automatically arrived back in the view. You are out of the view when you're busy, thinking, oh, I'm going to do this, and then they'll say that, and this will happen, and it'll be wonderful, or it'll be terrible. And when we're doing that, we're gone. We're in a dream. We're somewhere else. But as soon as we recognize that, then we have arrived back. The reminder is nothing more than that. The reminder is the reminder to come back. This moment is like pressing the light switch. This moment of awakening, of the moment that you realize, I'm thinking. I was lost in thought. Is like pressing a light switch. Once the light is on, and you realize, oh, I was thinking. Once the light is on, you do not have to keep on pressing it, the switch. After a while, we again forget and are carried away. At that point, we must reapply deliberate mindfulness. You see, there are two kinds of mindfulness that he's talking about, two kinds of awareness. Deliberate and completely natural. Completely natural is you're just here, relaxed. There's no self-awareness. You've forgotten about being self-aware. And then deliberate mindfulness is you realize I'm lost in a thought, I'm going to see it, and then I'm back. That little bit of deliberateness is the technique. Most of us don't spend a lot of time in the very natural mindfulness, the natural awareness, where we're just totally present, relaxed, effortless. But we come back to that with that little technique. It's like pressing the light switch of saying, I'm thinking, and then you're back. Then you're back into this present moment. You're walking down the street, and suddenly you realize you've been lost in a dream, and you've walked by the store that you were looking for, and at that moment, you're back. And you realize, oh, I just walked by Starbucks, and you're no longer lost in the dream. You have pressed that light switch. You don't have to keep on pressing it, Then you just relax into this present moment until the next time. Lane.
In my meditation tonight, I was actually questioning if this spaciousness really is who I truly am, and that I could see that that there is an attachment I have to emptiness, and the ego is always there. It doesn't have a thought to identify with. It's identifying with it, with the spaciousness. So have you ever observed that? How do you practice with that?
You see that and let that go. See that when you are 100% aware, like you can do it with the breath, you become 100% aware of the out-breath. There is no ego. Ego ceases. When you become one, ego only exists when you're sort of split, you're bifurcated, and there's a watcher and a watched. That's what ego is. Ego's the watcher. And it's saying, oh, look at that. I'm doing this. That's good. That's bad. It's indifferent, whatever it might be. That's what the ego is. It's the watcher. But you can give up the watcher by being completely 100% aware, relaxed in this present moment.
Is this kind of the difference between the deliberate and natural mindfulness you were just talking about?
Yeah. In the thing is that then the ego will come back and say, oh, I was aware. And that's another thought. And then you let that one go. See, the ego's always trying to co-opt it. But there'll be these moments, at least, when you're just 100% here. Just relaxed, here, easy. And then the ego says, oh, you just did it. But it's unnecessary. That's what he's talking about. It's like trying to press the light switch after the light's already on. Keep pushing it up, You don't have to. I think, too, that self-consciousness of ego, wanting to be the one who's aware and say, oh, I was just aware, that wears out. It diminishes over time because it's unnecessary. It's really an extra, it's just utterly unnecessary in your life. In fact, it just clogs things up a little bit. It sort of distracts you. And eventually it starts to go away because you relax more.
Actually, you answered my question. I was thinking about, like, before even sitting down to meditate, kind of made a decision to be positive.
I'm sorry, what was the last part?
The difference between the deliberate and natural, because if I found out that if I just do the natural, I get whacked around by my thought, very easily whacked around. Like I'm just like, oh, but the deliberate one is like, before I sit down to meditate, and I would just say that it's kind of putting a glass with tinted color. The color is positive, so I kind of made the decision to be positive. So that's a deliberate, just a little bit of that, and then everything just go, and then I said, oh, it's much easier for me to watch it go, instead of get back around, Yeah.
Let me read this. Perhaps this might be helpful. He says, this is Tulku Urgyen. There are two types of mindfulness, deliberate and effortless. By starting out with the mindfulness of deliberate attention, the practitioner can make a clean distinction between being distracted or not. Effortless mindfulness is of course possible if you happen to be one of the people of the highest caliber, but you can also get there, But he's talking about sort of right off the, in the very beginning. The instantaneous type of person who does not really need to go through the path. However, for most other people, especially in the Mahamudra system or the Dzogchen system, the mindfulness of deliberate attention is essential in the beginning. Otherwise, by relying only on effortless mindfulness, you may not even notice whether you are distracted or not. It is much better to practice deliberate mindfulness, even though it is subtly conceptual, and gradually progress to effortless mindfulness. See, the subtle conceptuality is you say, I'm going to come back to awareness. I was thinking, I'm coming back to awareness. That's the subtle conceptuality. But eventually that just goes. It just evaporates because it's not necessary. In the Mahamudra teachings, there are two main great traditions in the Kagyu and Nyingma sects, Mahamudra and Dzogchen, respectively. In the Mahamudra teachings, you often find the phrase, original innate nature. This is none other than the Buddha nature. The training is simply to become used to that, whether you call it Mahamudra, Madhyamaka, or Dzogchen. These are all different words for the same natural state. But to train, you must first of all be introduced to and have recognized the view. That's what we were doing here. By resting in this open space, we're resting in the view, what he's calling the view. In Mahamudra, once the practitioner has recognized the view, he or she takes mindfulness as the path. It is a way of training in that view. The view is just this open awareness of the present moment, and we train in it. It is a way of training in that view. If mindfulness is lost, then we are led completely astray into the black dissipation of ordinary habitual patterns. Once we lose the mindfulness of this present moment, this space, then we are led astray into the black dissipation of ordinary habitual patterns. Aren't we also familiar with that? Black dissipation means that one forgets all thought of practice and simply deviates into ordinary activities, thinking about, all the passions and fears and hopes and projects and ambitions and angers and all those things. All practice is left behind. So either we remember the view is this open space of awareness, and sustain it, or the practice is destroyed. We need to know when we are distracted. Discursive thought is distraction. But once we recognize the essence of the thought, we have arrived at non-thought. That means once you see it, then you arrive at non-thought. Once you see the thought, that in itself is non-thought. If you realize, I'm thinking, I've been thinking about my enemy, I've been thinking about my lover, and you realize that, you're at non-thought. Anyway, you can read this chapter, it's marvelous, it's very elegant and sophisticated and beautiful. Huh? Tulku Urgyen, he's dead now. He had 4 sons, 3 of whom are abroad and teaching, often in this country. One is named Tsukni Rinpoche. He's a wonderful teacher. They're all wonderful teachers. I've never actually encountered the third, just know him by reputation. Mingyur Rinpoche, who you might have heard of, he's wonderful. And Chiki Nima, whom I've never met or heard speak. And they all teach Dzogchen because their father lived and breathed Dzogchen. Yes?
Related to what we've been talking about, I just remembered a saying that's always resonated with me. The Buddha doesn't know he's the Buddha.
That's beautiful. That's terrific. He doesn't care. He's not going around thinking, well, I'm the Buddha. Yeah. That's terrific. I remember Trungpa Rinpoche looking at us way back in the early days and saying the Buddha was a completely ordinary person. And he said, you all want to be extraordinary. He said to us, his students. Completely ordinary. You're just here. That's what we do when we practice. We just come present. We give up that thought of I and me and my achievement. I'll read something from this chapter. This chapter is very beginning approach to meditation. But this isn't. He starts out by saying, in shamatha practice, there are these 2 main strains, shamatha and vipassana. Shamatha literally means abiding in peace. In Tibetan, it's shine. And it's the first practice we do. It has to do with focusing the mind one-pointedly on an object, and one achieves peace. And the other virtue of shamatha is that one begins to see the extent to which we're lost in thought so much of the time. Until people really see that, they're very, very, what they call ordinary people. Most people have no clue the extent to which they're driven by their thoughts continuously. Right? But when we begin to practice shamatha, then we begin to see how our monkey mind, and because it obscures the object of meditation, we try to practice transcendental meditation, working with a mantra, or working with the breath, or focusing on a candle flame, and you realize your mind is just out of control. It's just continually thinking. So that's the main virtue of shamatha, those 2. One is that we see the extent to which we've been gripped in thought, and then we also achieve some peace. And if you read Our Pristine Mind, which is another book I've been recommending, he says that the peace and the calm that you achieve with shamatha is a little better than a good nap. That's what Organ Choang says. And then the second main strain of meditation is vipassana. That's awareness practice or insight practice. And that's what we have been doing here. That's the practice that we just did, with an element of shamatha in it because we're focusing on an object, albeit it's this space. But basically what we've been doing is vipassana practice. Vipassana practice, the deeper it gets, the more you begin to realize that I'm this, I'm that, is not only unnecessary, but disappears as you come present. The more you begin to realize that, the deeper the vipassana gets. And as it deepens, it takes on different names. It's the same practice. It's the practice of coming present into this space of the present moment. But it takes on the name of shunyata. That's the first one. And then mahamudra and dzogchen. Because those are the names for the way in which the world changes as you come more and more present. but it's the same practice. Tulku Urgyen says that in one of his essays. He said, whether you call it Vipassana or Shunyata, Mahamudra, Dzogchen, it's basically the same practice. He says, in Vipassana, there is also total involvement of body, speech, and mind. In addition, you are also completely aware of the environment around you. This is Vipassana. See, we're here in the space. We're aware of the environment. When you are involved so much that there is no longer an individual entity left to watch itself, this is it. That is shunyata, or emptiness, level of practice. That's it, when you get rid of that watcher. Rinpoche used to call him the hitchhiker, the watcher. He's just extraneous rider along for the ride. Then he talks about how we can use different things to help us, like posture, awareness of the body, having good posture, helps your mind. It helps your mind come back into the present, makes you more alert, cheerful, present, less lost in thought, which is always, or usually, sad and complainatory. And if it's not, it's manic. It says, in sitting and walking meditation, you are dealing with body, speech, and mind simultaneously. There is no room for imagination or improvisation. You just constantly come back to this, whatever it is. I think I'm just going to stop here. This is good, though. You know, if you basically there are two ways for us to practice. One is we can just rest our minds in this open space, and the other is we can work with the out-breath. Now, when we work with the out-breath, it's because we want a handle to pull us back into the present moment. That's what the breath does. The breath always takes place now. And so if you find that you're lost in thoughts about the past and the future, if you've just been doing sort of space meditation, pure Vipassana meditation, just being here, and that you're getting lost in thoughts of the past and the future, then you can inject the out-breath, working with the breath, because it'll help you come back out of thought, right? And he's talking about why the out-breath. This is very interesting, and not the in-breath. He says, you are identifying with the breath. In particular, you are following the out-breath out. The in-breathing is just a gap or a space. You wait. Then, when you have breathed out, you dissolve and gap. So it's out, dissolve, pause, or gap. In that way, openness and expansion take place constantly. By creating a gap area, there is less strain. Out-breathing is an expression of stepping out of your system. It has nothing to do with centralizing in your body. The out-breathing is an expression of being. In-breathing is a confirmation of being, because we need oxygen to live. The in-breathing is a sign of struggle. If you are short of breath, you breathe in. Out-breathing has a feeling of relaxation and well-being, a feeling of existing. Breathe out, you're giving out. It's like a generosity. He says, when you hear the gong, you collect yourself. Take stock of your body. Check your posture. Make sure that you're not holding tension. Just relax. Be very erect and alert. That's when the gong rings. Don't just jump right into it. feel your posture. And then at the end he says to review. First you hear the gong, then you settle in your body, then you go out with the out-breath, chew, then you come back to your posture. So you have the mind together with the breath, with the body as an overall reference point. That's the end of that chapter. Any comments or complaints? I think this point about how you deal with thought, that you don't try to get rid of it, don't make it an enemy, you just see it. And at the moment that you see it, you're no longer lost in it. You don't have to do a thing. That is so important and profound. Effortless.
I have two questions. One has to do with what you're talking about conceptual mind, using conceptual mind. When we sort of label thoughts and say I'm thinking, and bring our attention back, that's sort of conceptualizing. It seems like a lot of I'm curious where how mantras and other visualizations, other practices fit into that, because it's very conceptual, right? If I wish that I am happy, healthy, safe, and live at ease, and then I go out in the practice of to wishing other people are happy and healthy and safe and living with ease, then going out to the whole world. It's a very conceptual practice, right? I'm conceptualizing myself as an individual, other people as individual, external to me, and so on and so forth. And I guess what is, I feel like it makes sense that we're creating like positive, a positive aspiration for everyone in mantras like that. But I don't know, what do we do with the conceptualization part of that? It seems to be reinforcing conceptual mind.
There's a number of different things contained in your question, if that's a question. You referenced basically visualization practice and mantra practice. When you get to visualization practice, like Yidam practice, that's a thing unto itself, and it's a topic. A second topic that you introduced was the idea of contemplation, really. Conceptual subjects that one might think about. Being compassionate, or being joyful, or death, or whatever one might think about. And those are two different but related topics. Let's leave the Yidam practice aside, because the way this works is that the Yidam practice is sort of the practice of the Vajrayana up to Mahamudra and Dzogchen. And when you get to Mahamudra and Dzogchen, you're not doing Yidam practice anymore. It goes back, and it's a deeper version of just what we're doing now. That's why you can read Tulku Urgyen talking about Mahamudra and Dzogchen, because it applies to sitting meditation practice. It's just that it takes it to the deepest, most pure, perfect level. Okay? Whereas Yidam practice is something else again. That has to do with learning to see the world as sacred, because we normally don't. And you can do that kind of practice, and many people do. You can also just jump right ahead to Dzogchen and Mahamudra, and people do that too. It's really a matter of where you find yourself, who your teachers are, and what your inclination is. Now, with regard to the contemplation practices, thinking about topics, the reason we do it is that it keys our intuition. You see, we're so habituated to seeing the world as being ordinary in ways that we've been seeing it for decades, and maybe even multiple lives, if you believe in that. And so, by contemplating subjects, we can begin to spur our intuition to see the world in a different way. And it can begin to inform our practice. So we study about meditation. And then we take those studies and we go and we practice them. And we bring it into practice. Well, you can do other subjects as well with contemplation. It's necessary. They're the three wheels of learning, right? Study, contemplation, and meditation. Meditation is pure experience. Study is purely intellectual. Contemplation is where you bring them together. Otherwise, if we didn't contemplate these teachings and the ideas that the world could be seen differently, we just keep going along and along and along. You know, it's much slower. I mean, one thing you can contemplate is that the world is sacred. I mean, that's the contemplation of the what they call creation and completion practices in the Vajrayana. That's where you're doing visualization. When you do visualization practice, there are three elements to visualization practice. You know, you're working with, you're visualizing a deity. You might be visualizing Tara. She's up there on the wall. But probably you'll be visualizing something more like Vajrayogini or Chakrasamvara or who knows what. And the three elements are, first of all, the element of shamatha, you could call it. You see, visualization practice is fundamentally a shamatha kind of practice because it involves concentration on a subject, on an object. The object in this case is the deity, the picture. And if your concentration is good, your shamatha, supposedly, I've never been able to do this, you're supposed to be able to visualize the deity right down to the pupils of their eyes. How about that for detail, you know? Immense detail. The second aspect is to understand the symbolism of the deity. Because the deity, in and of him or herself, is symbolic of particular principles, and then they wear ornaments which are symbolic and speak to us. They're teachings, intellectual teachings, each one of them. And it's important to know all that, to study that, what the symbolism in the deity involved with the deity is. And the third aspect is the most profound. It's called the pride of the deity. And that is the sure knowledge that you are the deity and what that means. So there are these three aspects in visualization practice. And you might be chanting mantras as you do the visualization and doing mudras and with your hands and playing instruments. And so it involves body, speech, and mind all together. And so it's a vipassana practice as well, in that sense, of involving all this body and speech and mind and the people around you if you're in a group. But Dzogchen and Mahamudra practice go beyond that. They don't work with deities. They don't work with that kind of symbolism. And they don't work with Vajra pride. They just work with the distinction between that fundamental basic awareness of space and everything that arises in it, on the one hand, and mental events, thought, what's called ordinary mind, sem, on the other. And that's what Mahamudra and Dzogchen are primarily about, with some departures. There's some other things involved as well. The Tibetans just can't resist complicating it. But we won't get into that. But if you read Tulku Urgyen, you'll be getting really the core pith, or for that matter, Our Pristine Mind. You're getting core pith of Dzogchen, which ironically is higher than the creation and completion practices. It's more pure, it's the shortest path. Tulku Urgyen in this book, I forget where, but one of those chapters, he says that if you practice Dzogchen with diligence, you can achieve full enlightenment in 14 years. Pretty good. 14 years. Yeah, really. Some of us may not have 14 years left. That's one problem. But then in your next life, get a leg up.
Did you have another question? No. I guess I have a question of elaboration or clarification on something you said, which was that when you are sitting and practicing and you become aware that you're thinking, that's it, like that brings you back to the present moment. But isn't there a little more effort involved there? Because my mind is like you have a choice then. When I find that I'm thinking and I realize it, I can actually just be aware of it and just keep going right back into it in that moment, choose to, because it's really juicy thought or fantasy or whatever, or come back to the breath or come back to the room or whatever it is.
Yeah.
From what I got from you is that almost that just being aware of it is what does it.
At some point, just being aware of it is what does it. It's a matter of where your loyalty is. And to the extent that your loyalty is with thought, it'll be very sticky. But to the extent that your loyalty begins to shift and come to this present moment, this space, then it becomes easier and easier to let go of the thought. When you realize you're thinking, and it just, you see you are back. Whenever you realize you're thinking, you're not. That's non-thought, when you realize you're thinking. When you realize, I've been lost in a thought. You don't have to say it to yourself. You just see it. And that's what Tulku Urgyen says, it's non-thought. And then the question is that a sticky thought that's going to pull you back? That sex fantasy or that fear, if you're for your survival or whatever it is? Or are you going to be able to say, it's just a thought. Just a little thought. Namdak in Tibetan. And you let those namdaks go. And they self-liberate, that's the thing. You don't have to do anything to them. Yes? Well, maybe we should end.
I might have a quick story to address what I heard CT say.
Okay.
I was on retreat last summer, and we were asked to do walking meditation outside the hall for about 20 minutes. And the instructions were, with one footstep, may I be happy, and with the other footstep, may I be healthy. So, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be happy. And it didn't even take me 15 minutes to get to the point where I was like, I don't even know what happiness is anymore. And so,
yeah.
The point being that there was a previous version of myself that might have judged me for that, but by the time we got to dinner time, I was kind of like marveling at it and saying, oh, well, that was a really interesting experience. And so I think there's the ability to observe, but also the ability to be kind to myself allows me to be kind to others. And so it wasn't instantly, oh, isn't this interesting? But later on, it wasn't like, oh, I'm a crappy meditator, this is not going anywhere, I'm never going to blah, 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 blah. But it was like, that was interesting. And so maybe sometimes when that conceptual thing happens, it just needs to unspool itself, and that needs to be okay.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so. I mean, the best is when you let all the stories go, and you learn that you can just rest in this without a story, without any explanation, without any complaint, praise, plan, regrets, that you can just rest in this. Come back again and again. That this is trustworthy, immutable, really. It's just unshakable. It doesn't depend on attitude or thought or anything, because it's always there. And then our practice really starts to get better. Oops. Marie? Well, this is the last, and then we're going to end. Okay.
So I was thinking about thoughts, if they can self-liberate thoughts, what we're doing with the negative energy, which we get out of getting angry, or out of dwelling on negative thoughts, and we have this negative energy, and we don't know what to do with it, because even if from my experience, even when I try to see it, it wouldn't go. It still stays there, and I'm just stuck, and I don't know what to do with that negative energy, which is like drowning me. And then I think that maybe some visualization practice would be helpful, because otherwise this energy wouldn't go itself. So what you would recommend?
It's pretty vague, but okay. I think, what?
Take a shower.
Take a shower. I think that the main thing is that there are a number of answers for this. One is to keep sitting. To keep sitting, and when that comes up, that negative energy, you see it and you let it go. And when it comes up, you see it and it goes. And you just do that repeatedly, over and over again. Now, there are practices that you can do. So, if you have the opportunity, and the inclination. So let's say that you have a fight with somebody, and it's full of negative, energy, and you feel badly about it, but you're really angry. There's that practice that is so difficult, but really powerful, of you take the blame. And you go to that person, even though you know that it was their fault. And you say, I'm sorry, it was my fault. You take the blame. It's very interesting to do that. Look at the look on her face. Yeah, you do it all the time. Yeah, Trungpa Rinpoche, he said, I've done it thousands of times myself.
Mostly husbands, though.
Huh? Mostly what?
Husbands
Do that.
Husbands do that.
Husbands do that. Husbands, yes. This is not and now you say, you're right, dear. It's not true. See, there's your chance. So really, there are a number of techniques that you can do, like taking the blame. But other than those techniques where you actually do something, you just sit with it. And it comes up, you see it, you let it go. And eventually it burns out.
This is just a technique that I find very helpful. Sometimes the right and left brain hemisphere of the brain gets very overtaxed, let's say. And so I find it very helpful to walk backwards, because we're always going going frontward, going forward. But if you just to reboot or restart the brain, just simply walking backwards, like I'll go out in the hallway and just walk backwards very slowly, like 50 or 100 steps. And when you do that, your mind can just start to take a fresh start. Sometimes you just get the brain gets so overloaded with things that we do. Especially, John's laughing because he hates what I say.
No, I think it's an interesting idea.
It's amazing how it works, because sometimes it's just a physical thing where you're just overloaded. And a lot of times I do that in airports when you're flying and you get off the plane. Let's say you have to wait for another plane. I just find a spot, an empty spot, and I just walk backwards over and over and over again, and then I feel so much better. It's just a physical adjustment of the right and left brain hemisphere. And it just kind of, the whole thing seems fresh, like you refresh the computer. So you could try that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's about breaking the pattern and breaking the momentum. You can walk backwards. What I did is I used the less dominant hand to write, so it's completely like, in case you can't really walk backwards everywhere, you can use your less dominant hand, and it's kind of like breaking your patterns. When you break that pattern, you break the momentum of the thought, so it's just a little skill, and about what was saying about, taking the blame, that's a little bit hard for me. When you really seriously know the other, really, hard. But I practice this time is what I agree with somebody's attack. Somebody was attacking me, and I agree with her, and she didn't know what to do. She completely caught by surprise because she attacked me, and then I did not fight back. I just agreed with her attack, and then relationship becomes better. It was somebody who lived in my building, So it was just amazing, just by breaking their pattern. So that's the point. Yeah.
Well, anybody else? Lane.
If you're talking about a recurring tendency, I would highly recommend a book called Feeding Your Demons, which is basically the author's contemporary version of Chod practice, which is basically about turning our demons into allies. And this method actually helps us.
Mm-hmm. That's by Sultan Malioni, who is also a student of Trungpa Rinpoche, and an old Dharma sister of mine and many others in our Sangha. And in fact, she was recognized to be a reincarnation of, what's the name of the person who brought the Chud teachings into Tibet? Lapchik? No. Huh? Or we've almost got it. Yeah. We'd have to look it up. Well, anyway, let's do the dedication of merit. Oh, an announcement. Next Sunday, a picnic. Westchester Buddhist Center is having a picnic in Irvington at Mathiasen Park, 12:30 to 4. We're all invited. If you decide you want to go, I think Lane and I are going to maybe train up together, and we could just meet at Grand Central or not. It's right near an easy walk from Irvington train station. And go to the website and tell them you're coming, RSVP, and they're asking people to bring some food if you wish. You don't have to, but if you do, if you are going to bring some food, make a contribution, let them know on the website so that they can plan better. And it should be fun. It's really beautiful up there. It's by the Hudson River.
What's the event for?
It's just the Midsummer's Day. This is Trungpa Rinpoche. Trungpa Rinpoche created an event that we always celebrated called Midsummer's Day. And it just was around the 21st of June, and we would all meet outside and have these big events and play volleyball and go horseback riding if they had horses and all kinds of funny things.
The summer solstice?
It's the summer solstice, right. Sorry. Thank you. See? It's to celebrate the summer solstice. And
It's inconveniently on Thursday, which is not as good a day for picnics, so it's on Sunday.
it's on Sunday.
But the
Yeah.
solstice is on Thursday.
Huh? I know. Some of the solstice is on Thursday. Yeah, just right. Who's going to... People work. So, and there'll be lots of people and it'll be fun.
12:30.
Huh? 12:30 to 4.
Family?
And if you go to the westchesterbuddhistcenter.org website, you'll see the news about it.
It's
If you come, I get to meet your baby. Okay. Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's about a 50-minute train ride or something from Grand Central. Okay. By this merit, may all attain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.